This is Mark Wells, and this is part 2 of the Wells Report on Manning Marable's book, Race, Reform, and Rebellion for My People. In part 1 of this report, I highlighted the career of author, activist, and professor Manning Marable, who died on April 1st of this year. Over the course of part 1, I explored the contents of Marable's 1984 book, Race, Reform, and Rebellion, The Second Reconstruction in Black America, 1945 to 1982. In part 2, I will take a brief look at black politics during the presidency of the 33rd President of the United States, Harry Truman. In the late 1940s, the Harry Truman administration had requested $400 million from Congress to fight leftist elements in Turkey and Greece. Simultaneously, here in the U.S., labor unions were being pressured to eliminate any Marxist, leftist, or anti-racist elements from their ranks. Also included in these expulsion efforts were groups that were supposed to represent the interests of African Americans. And although it was true that many African Americans looked at the Communist Party as being dedicated to the dismantling of segregation in the fight against racism, the American Communist Party was never able to overcome the image that their main priorities lay more in the survival of the Soviet Union rather than the struggle of the black community. In this post-World War II era, African American loyalty to the U.S. was again at a crossroads. The black community continued to face Jim Crow segregation in the South, de facto discrimination in the North, and segregation in the military, where black troops were fighting and dying in wars overseas for a country that continued to treat them as second-class citizens at home. Also keep in mind that this was a time when Southern black women were continuously threatened, sexually assaulted, and raped by white men or white police officers as they walked home or stood at bus stops. Rapes that our federal, state, and local governments did nothing to stop. To take us back to those times, consider the case of 91-year-old Reese Taylor, who was a survivor of this era. Taylor was 24 years of age in 1944 when she was abducted and gang raped at gunpoint by 6 white men on September 3rd of that year in Abbeville, Alabama. Although there was evidence, signed affidavits, the perpetrators identified, and even confessing to the crime, 2 grand juries returned no indictments in the case. It was only in March of this year, 67 years after the crime, that Reese Taylor received a simple apology from Democratic State Representative Dexter Grimsley of Newville, Alabama. It is against this backdrop of civil and human rights violations that African Americans were expected to help purge the country of communist elements in the United States. Harry Truman himself viewed African American demands for social, racial, and economic justice with condescension and disdain, and sat nearly silent as white racist groups continued to act out racist assaults on the black community in the 40s and 50s. But as the 1948 presidential election approached, Truman's advisors informed him that the black vote would play an important role in his re-election aspirations. As a matter of fact, it was believed that the black vote would be the decisive voting bloc that would determine if Truman's re-election bid would be successful. With this in mind, Truman immediately went into action, publicly endorsing civil rights legislation. African American leaders, in attempting to garner support from the Truman administration, threw their support behind Truman and supported witch hunts of leftist, communist organizations and individuals. Although labor leader A. Philip Randolph had once edited a socialist-leaning journal in the years of World War I, by the 1940s, Randolph had radically changed his views and opposed any sort of cooperative actions with Marxist groups. By denouncing any communist activity and assuring the separation of black labor from communism, Randolph hoped to gain the political support of the Truman administration and anti-communist liberals. This was also true of the NAACP of the 1940s. Under the direction of Walter White, the NAACP of the 1940s moved further to the right. White also supported government witch hunts of leftist radicals and warned the NAACP staff not to support the Progressive Party candidate, former Vice President Henry Wallace, in opposition to Truman in the presidential election. As the Communist Party did not have a presidential candidate, it supported Wallace. White, like Randolph, wanted to link black civil rights with the anti-communist sentiment of the day. White's pro-government stance put him at odds with one of the NAACP's founding members, W.E.B. Du Bois. Although Du Bois had once denounced Marxism, after visiting Russia several times between 1926 and 1949, Du Bois had concluded that the Soviet Union's promotion of African independence was legitimately progressive and that the black liberation movement needed to adapt a socialist perspective. In the end, although the Progressive Party's civil rights agenda was far more expansive than that of the Democratic Party, Walter White urged black voters to support Truman. Because of the black vote, Truman carried several key states and was eventually reelected. During this time, prominent African Americans like singer-actor Paul Robeson, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Congressman Adam Clayton Powell all recognized that any anti-communist actions or policies would by extension also stagnate the progressive movement for black civil rights. But African Americans chose to follow the lead of black elites and got behind Harry Truman and the Democratic Party. But support of the Democratic Party would ultimately marginalize the voices of progressive black voices and organizations and further align the black community with a party that didn't share its views or interests. In the fallout of the Red Scare, Robeson's career was destroyed as he and Du Bois were both blacklisted, suffering all sorts of public smears and isolation. The NAACP did nothing as the 82-year-old Du Bois, one of the founders of the organization, was handcuffed, fingerprinted, and presented to the American people as a criminal for allegedly serving as, quote, an agent of a foreign principal, unquote. Although Du Bois was acquitted of all charges, in aligning itself with anti-communist sentiments of the day, the NAACP hung Du Bois out to dry, as Walter White ordered the NAACP's legal defense team to do nothing to clear the name of the organization's former leader. From FDR's New Deal through Truman and up to Obama, this paternalistic relationship between African Americans and the Democratic Party is a legacy that continues to this day. I will conclude this spotlight on Manning Marable's book, Race Reform and Rebellion, in part 3 of this series, For My People.
If you have a business in Metro Detroit, you should be in the Detroit Black Pages. For info, call 961-3289. That's 961-3289.
Hello, I am Heather Johnson, and I'm a media intern with Project Bait. We're so excited to be able to talk to you and to all of the viewers and have you watch our shows. And we're always looking to have other media interns and to highlight businesses in the community. We've always been here and we always will. We plan to have a long-lasting relationship with our viewers and to continue to have our place in the community. We're always looking for people to be involved with Project Bait. So if you're interested in becoming a media intern, director, you want to work behind the scenes, or you would like to be on camera, feel free to contact us here at Project Bait.